Thanks for joining us online here at Flatirons. We're in our current series, Operator's Manual. If you have any questions, feel free to visit our website at flatironschurch.com or any of our social media accounts. Thank you.
What's up, Flatirons? We're so glad you're here with us this morning. Let's all stand and worship our God together.
To Calvary, where Jesus bled and died for me. I see His wounds, His hands, His feet, my Savior.
Jesus once told a story of a shepherd that had 100 sheep. When he realized that he had lost one of them, he left the other 99 behind in an open field to go and find the one that was lost. That might sound a little like foolish or even maybe reckless to leave 99 behind for just one. But I think the point Jesus wants to communicate to you and me today is his heart, his attitude toward you and I. When we feel lost, when we feel far from God, separated, maybe we feel guilt or shame, God wants you to know that he hasn't given up on you, that he's not sitting passively by just hoping that you get your life together. No, he is actively pursuing us, running after us with a love that never fails. So as we sing this song, I just want you to try to believe that truth today.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. And you've been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. And you've been so, so kind.
All right, let's declare this today.
Coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down. Coming after me.
Let's believe that today. Come on.
There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up. Coming after me. That's right. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down. Coming after me.
Mark. I am so stoked that you guys would be here on Super Bowl Sunday. Hey, high five 3 people around you. Tell them your name, say good morning, and have a seat.
Hey, Flatirons, how are you doing this morning? Good. If you're joining us online, thanks for being with us. My name is Lindsay, and I work with middle school and high school students here at the Lafayette campus. Zach couldn't be with us today. Yeah, thank you. Zach couldn't be with us today, so he asked me to step in for him and share just a few things with you. So first, I want to speak specifically just to the middle school and high school students in the room. So I don't know what your impression or your experience with youth group is or has been, but I get that it can sound a little weird or lame, or maybe you're not really sure if that's your thing. And so here's what I would want you to know. Our student ministry is a place designed specifically for you. And so we love all of the same things that you do. We love live music, and we love video games, and we love playing dodgeball and getting to hang out with our friends. And so you'll get to do all of that at our program. But it's also this place where you can start figuring out what it looks like for you as a middle schooler or high schooler to start following Jesus now. But maybe you're not sure what you think about Jesus yet, and that's okay too. You're just looking for a cool place to come hang out, where maybe you could meet some people who you feel like you can really be yourself with, where you don't have to pretend or wear a mask, but you could be honest about whatever it is you're facing in your life right now. We want to be a home for you too. So if you have never been to one of our programs, I want to personally invite you to come check that out. Middle school is at 11 a.m. on Sundays, so you could literally run and still make it right now if you wanted to. But I would love to meet you and to have a conversation with you. My second announcement is about groups. So groups are still open online, and you can search by zip code, so the city that you live in, or day of the week, or type of group, to find the perfect fit for you and your family for whatever season of life you find yourself in right now. My husband and I, we jumped back into a group back in September when they launched. And in just a few months, those people have truly become a lifeline for us. And so if you haven't gotten connected to a group, then I encourage you to head to the website and see what groups are still available. Okay, we are in the middle of what we call a man series here around Flatirons. And I was asked to share just a little bit about how this series is affecting me as a woman. So if I'm being honest, when I first heard that we were doing another man series, I was like, there's this little piece of me that was hoping, I just want someone to talk to me about what God has to say about me being a woman specifically. So if you've ever felt like that, I just want you to hear that you're not alone and that we see you. And it's also why I'm so excited that later on this year, Jim and Ben are going to talk about biblical femininity and what God had designed for women. But God is also using this man series to teach me and to grow me in a lot of ways. And so the first is, I feel like I'm better able to understand my husband. I feel like it's given me some words to some things that I had been feeling that I couldn't really explain before. And so because of what God is teaching Cole through this series, I feel like I'm able to say, you feel championed. And I feel encouraged, and I feel like everything God has for me is in reach because I'm married to Cole, because I'm married to a good man. And this series is really showing me how to identify one. It's also inspired some really healing and cool conversations between me and my dad. So we don't have kids yet, but I feel like I'm able to just empathize or just appreciate the incredible weight and responsibility it takes to lead a family. And so I'm much more grateful for my dad now, I think, than I was when I was living with him underneath his roof. And then I think about the hundreds of young men in my ministry. And I think about how if they could lean into the truth of this series, especially what Ben has prepared for us today, not just when they're 20 or 30 or 40, but right now, if they could grab a hold of that, I think that could just change the trajectory of their life. And not just their life, but of their families right now, of the women that they're gonna live next door to in the dorm one day, of their future fraternity brothers. I think about how it could change companies and organizations because these good men, right, are using their power and their influence for good. And so, ladies, I have a challenge for us this morning. I think that we have this unique position and perspective. We get this front row seat, right, to this journey that the men of our church are on. And so let's use our voice to cheer them on in this and to encourage them to stay in the fight, right? Because it's not always easy, but I do think it's worth it. And in the end, everybody wins. So I'm gonna pray for us this morning, and then the band has something special prepared, and then we'll get to the rest of our day. God, thank you so much for this place. God, thank you for Flatirons and everyone who's listening in. God, I pray this morning that you would help open up our hearts and our minds to whatever it is that you want to teach us specifically. God, I pray that you would just quiet all distractions, whatever was going on 10 minutes before we arrived here. God, I pray that if we could lean in to what you have to say through Ben today, that God, we could leave this place with a little more hope and peace and strength to face whatever it is that the rest of the week holds for us. Jesus, we love you and we need you, and I pray these things in your name. Amen.
All right, what's up? We good? Yeah? Hey, I'm Ben Foote. I'm the teaching pastor here. I'm glad you're here today. I'm especially glad you're here on Super Bowl Sunday because I was convinced like it would just be me right now and a couple volunteers. So I'm glad you're here. Personally, I'm not really as into football. Like, I'll root for the Broncos because I live here, but I'm not like a diehard fan of any team, you know? Like, baseball's a totally different story. Like, I don't know who I am without baseball. And the success or inevitable failure of the Cleveland Indians will change my mood, unfortunately. But football, I'm just kind of like, yeah, I don't care who wins today. However, I know I'm not, I'm a rare case that way. And so help me kind of feel out the room here, whether by, clapping or cheering or whatever. Who here hopes that the Rams win this thing today? Okay. It's loud. If you're still brave, who here wants the Patriots to win this thing? Okay. A little bit of booing. That's fine. Yeah, I'm sorry if you got booed. You're still welcome here. We'll be nicer to you next week. I do wonder, Who hurt you when you were young? How do you become a Patriots fan? But that's fine. The real reason I'm asking is this will help me gauge like who my people are. Who here doesn't really care about either team? You're just more rooting for a wardrobe malfunction at the halftime show. Yeah. You're my people. This is why I'm gonna watch this game today. I'm just waiting for Maroon 5 to break all their legs. I'm praying for it too. You can think I'm terrible, that's fine. But hi, I'm glad you're here. Hey, so we're in the middle of this man series, and what we're doing in this series is as men, we're asking ourselves, what kind of men are we right now? What kind of men do we hope to become? And then does Jesus have anything of value to offer us in this arena of manhood? Whenever we do one of these man series, we always pack the place out. We always have a lot of people turn up. And I think that's because at the end of the day, most of us aren't exactly sure what a good man is supposed to look like. What makes a good man? And then how do I become one? Let's be honest, for the men in the room, we've been asking that question for our entire lives. We spent a lifetime searching for the answer, searching for manhood. We've looked all over the place. Right? Maybe if I sleep with enough people, or I climb another rung on the corporate ladder, or I make just this much more per paycheck, or I lose this amount of weight and I gain this amount of muscle, maybe then I'll feel like a good man. But if we're being honest, none of those things have made us feel like good men. And if we're being really honest, we know that none of those things ever will. And so it leaves us wishing there was an operator's manual. Right? Just some like dusty book out there that has all of the answers and has all the necessary guidelines, steps, warnings, and troubleshooting for what it looks like to be a good man. And that's exactly what we're doing in this series. We are posing the question, what if the operator's manual for being a good man does exist? And what if in the Bible we can find all the necessary guidelines, steps, warnings, and troubleshooting for being a good man, the stuff we've been looking for all along? I think it does. And so that's what we're doing in this series, and that's what I'm going to keep doing right now. And today I'm going to be picking up where Jim left off last weekend. I don't have time to do a lot of recapping, and so if you missed last weekend, at some point, go back online and watch it. But last week, Jim walked us through the first few chapters of Genesis, the very first book of the Bible, where God creates men and women, and we learned together that men were designed to co-rule with God as kings. And when we say kings, it's a metaphor, of course. Right? It's a metaphor for carefully wielding power and authority and responsibility. We're not saying that men were designed to like wear crowns and drink mead out of goblets and shout dilly dilly or whatever kings do. It's just a metaphor, but it's a helpful one. And so men were designed to co-rule with God as kings, which means this: if men are operating by the book, by the manual, in the way that we were designed by God to operate, then men will care for the things and people entrusted to them. Our bodies, jobs, our homes, our employees, wives, girlfriends, children, you name it. We will care for those things in the same way that God himself would care for them. So people should be getting a clearer picture of God's goodness because it should be on display in the goodness of men. And if we were to do that, then everybody wins. Because if men are operating by design, by the manual, then every individual in the sphere of a man's influence should feel more loved and more protected and more blessed and more strengthened and set up to succeed simply for having had that man in their life. And that just sounds good. It sounds right. But of course, the reality of the situation is that that's not really what jumps to our minds when we're trying to describe manhood, and that's because the vast majority of men in the world have not lived by design. And when we don't live by design, the people who typically pay for it the most are the people entrusted to us. Because if the king doesn't know how to rule, or the king rules poorly, his people are the ones who are going to pay for it. And so the question I want to ask today is simply this: if men were designed to co-rule with God as kings, then where did we go wrong? Right? Where did we get so off track? Why are good men still so few and far between? Why do we have a culture shouting about toxic masculinity, in many cases justifiably, by the way? Where did we go wrong? And in almost every single case, here is where we go wrong as men. There's something deep inside of us that we know, like in our guts, we know we're supposed to operate as kings. We just don't know what kind of kings. And so we go looking for masculinity outside of God's design, which always leads to one of two places, either tyranny or passivity. And that's what I want to talk about today. So let's start with tyranny. All right, what is tyranny? Tyranny happens when a man abuses his command to co-rule with God like a king. In fact, tyranny is when there is no co-ruling. The man has gone rogue. The king is rogue. And there's only unchecked, unbridled power and authority. And I'm actually not going to talk a lot today about tyranny, and not because it's unimportant to talk about, and not because it's rare. I'm not going to talk about tyranny very much today because unfortunately it's all too common and we're already very familiar with it. But here are some characteristics of tyranny so that we're all on the same page. If a man is operating out of tyranny, here's what it looks like. And unfortunately, it's just going to sound too familiar. So a tyrant man takes care of himself at the expense of others. I'm top priority. I'm the most important. A tyrant is threatened by other strong personalities. So we're pretending to be strong, but we're not. We don't know who we are. We're actually scared. And so if another man or woman of power and authority enters our lives, we feel threatened by it. Because of that, a tyrant cuts down anyone who won't look up to him. It's my way or the highway, right? If you're not going to get on board, I'm going to look for ways to cut you off at the knees. And a tyrant abuses or ignores people to get what he wants. I don't care what you want. I care what I want, and I don't care who I got to walk over to get it. And unfortunately, it just sounds familiar, maybe even convicting. We've known men like this. Maybe our fathers were this way. Right? We've been men like this maybe. Maybe we are men like this. At the very least, every single one of us in this room is very capable of it, and we probably operate out of tyranny more often than we think. To sink this down into reality, here's what tyranny looks like in the day-to-day. So men, we operate out of tyranny whenever we knock someone down a few pegs in order to make ourselves feel better or look better. We usually only do that because we're operating out of tyranny and we feel threatened by someone else's competence or power or leadership. Anytime we start buying into our own press and we think we're the greatest thing to have ever walked planet Earth, that's tyranny. Whenever we stab someone in the back to get ahead, that's tyranny. Whenever we tell our wives, our kids, girlfriends, whoever to do something just because I said so, tyranny. And when it goes unchecked, it unravels, and it unravels fast, and it unravels dark. And we end up going to war against our people instead of for our people. And when it unravels all the way, well, this is the kind of stuff that leads to emotional or physical or sexual abuse. It leads to crime. It leads to the kind of stuff we read about in the headlines, the kind of stuff that has launched the Me Too movement. I mean, let's take that catchphrase, for example. It's being tossed around a lot, toxic masculinity. It's a new term. It's an age-old problem. It's a real problem. It's been around since the beginning of time. I wouldn't call it toxic masculinity. I would call it tyrannical masculinity. Listen, men, when we're 3 years old and we throw a fit to get whatever we want, it's forgivable. Sometimes it's even cute. When we're 30 years old, it's destructive and it's deadly. That's tyranny, and we're already familiar with it. But then here's what a lot of us have done, like in reaction to this toxic or tyrannical masculinity that we've seen in ourselves, our society, our fathers, whoever. We swing over to the other side of the spectrum to a place called passivity. And this is where I want to spend a little time today, because when it comes to passivity, it's like the subtlest and sneakiest form of corrupt and distorted masculinity that exists. Half the time, we don't even know we're doing it. And so passivity, it just needs clearly defined and pointed out in our lives. And so to do that, I'm going to pick back up in Genesis 3. Last week, Jim took us all the way to the point where Eve took a bite of the fruit, all right? And like we talked about last week, we do this all the time, right? This is anytime we go looking to be satisfied by something outside of God's design. But I want to go back to that moment, because in that moment, we can see that passivity was at the root of the whole thing to begin with. All right, so look at this. This is right after Eve takes a bite of the fruit, and then the Bible says this. She, Eve, also gave some to her husband, Adam, who was with her, and he ate it. We say this all the time around here because it's true. The very first sin in the Bible isn't Eve taking a bite of fruit. The very first sin in the Bible is Adam's passivity. Where was he when the whole thing went south? The Bible says he was with her. He's standing on the sidelines, not saying a word, not stepping in to protect her. He's there the whole time. He's just sitting on his hands. And we can't really judge the guy because we do this all of the time. Right? This kind of passivity is when we look at someone entrusted to us, our employees, our best friends, our girlfriends, wives, children. We look at someone entrusted to us and we throw up our hands and we go, not my problem. Right? I'm too tired, not today, not my problem. At least I slip into this kind of passivity all the time. This is the kind of thing that happens whenever I get home after a long day of work and the snow needs shoveled. I should probably do it. And Allie's had a terrible day. I should probably ask her about it. And the kids are asking me to play with them. I should probably play with them. But instead of putting on my game face and engaging, I just tap out. And I give myself a laundry list of reasons that I think are justifiable, excuses for why I should be able to sit on the couch and just go into radio silence. Right? I tell myself, like, my job is stressful. Can be real stressful at times. And I've been solving problems all week at work. All weekend, I did this. And then everyone's been sick at home and none of us are getting sleep. I'm tired. Besides, I'm depressed. Not my problem. Not today. I deserve this. Right? I deserve to just sit on the couch and disengage. And whenever I do that, the result is that I leave people, my people, out there on their own to fend for themselves. And I tell myself it'll be fine because after all, the snow will eventually melt on its own. And Allie will recover from her day on her own. And the kids can play on their own. Not my problem. Not today. They can do this thing on their own. And then eventually, after saying not my problem enough times, then all the things and people entrusted to me inevitably begin falling apart. And when that happens, I start slinging another passive phrase. I start saying, not my fault. This is actually Adam's first reaction to his own passivity. Back in the garden, he starts feeling guilty. He feels ashamed. He starts thinking of ways to cover up his mistakes. He designs clothing for he and for Eve, and the two of them go into hiding. And then here's what happens next. The two of them are hiding, and then the Lord God called to the man. He says, "Where are you?" And he, Adam, answered. He goes, "I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and so I hid." And then God says, "Who told you you were naked?" Which, side note, like, I don't ever have to be told I'm naked. I know when I'm naked. Anyway, God goes, "Who told you you were naked?" He goes, "Did you eat from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from?" And then look at Adam's response. The man said, "Oh, wait, no. The woman you put here with me. She gave me some fruit from the tree and I ate it." Adam's first response. He goes, no. Look, God, this person you've burdened me with, right? This responsibility I never asked for, right? It's her fault, not my fault. Not my problem, not my fault. They're both ways of saying not my responsibility. And those three phrases are like the unholy trinity of passive masculinity. Not my problem, not my fault, not my responsibility. Back to my original question, if men were designed to co-rule with God as kings, then where did we go wrong? And the answer is timeless. It's ancient. Whether we're looking at the very first few chapters of the Bible or we're looking honestly at our lives right now, the answer is the same. It's simply, we don't know what masculinity is supposed to look like. And until we get that thing figured out, we are going to be forced to ping pong back and forth between tyranny and passivity for the rest of our lives. And the people who are going to pay for it the most are going to be the people that we care about the most.
Hi, I'm Paul Bruner. Grew up in Niwot, in the farm around here. Went to Niwot High School, ended up at CSU, worked corporate for a while, and then 11 years ago ended up at Flatirons as executive pastor. So growing up, my dad was a shop teacher, had this farm, loved working hard. He was a man that didn't have much emotion. Grew up in the generation that emotion for men, he shut it all down. So there was always a kind of a longing to have that attaboy, that approval, that, hey, son, I love you. For him, one of the things that I think was equity was hard work. And so to earn his love, earn his approval, I would do anything that he would want me to do. So again, wired to please others, head up to college. Now, because I'm passive, I'm drawn to strong, focused passionate people, and Di is that person. And so as we decide to start dating and get married, we end up in doing student ministry. And in the mix of student ministry, because of my passivity, I want to be the fun guy. I want to fill the room. I want to be everything to everyone. And so I'm seen as the good cop. And she became the party pooper, the bad guy. So do student ministry for some time. We decide to have a family. And so I'll pop our kids. And when they're little, I find that even in my passive state, I'm able to parent okay. But as my kids grew, especially my second child, one of the stories that comes up, and kind of the first time that I'm really hit hard aside the head of my passivity, she comes down the stairs. She's probably 7th grade, and she's going to go out with her friends. She comes down, and I see more skin than any father would ever want to see. And I think, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I don't want to face this, and I'm just going to play the passive card and I'll deal with it later and just let her go. Well, unfortunately, my wife doesn't believe in that. She says, nope, I will fight this fight. I will go in and push on that. You're not going out looking like that. And so she becomes the bad cop. So here's what happens. My passivity creates this good cop, bad cop, and it becomes a train wreck for our marriage. So much so that we're in the depths of this really tough season of life, and we end up going to see a counselor. She said, your daughter, when you are passive with the way you're raising her and the things you're allowing her to do, she is moved up alongside you and Diana, and she is running your family and destroying your family because you are being passive, Paul. And you, most importantly, are destroying Diana. Fast forward a couple years after the situation with the counselor, and I was at a weekend called The Crucible. And as we were working through our stuff and identifying the things that created the brokenness in me, I identified that out of a desire to be enough, out of a desire to find acceptance in people, I had really allowed that passivity to remove the voice I had, my desires, the man God created me to be, the man that wanted to be a peacemaker, not a peacekeeper. And on that weekend, God identified that I am a good man, I'm a strong man, and that I can battle on. We had a lot of rough years, but I would say today, although there's not a bow tied to this, into this story, that there are glimpses that I see of redemption. There are things that I see from the ashes, that my kids are moving in a good position or a good direction. They're working on their stuff. They're identifying the need for counseling. Diana has worked really hard on her own self, and it's given me conviction that I too need to get help. I too need to work on my junk and my stuff that has made me who I am. And I realize that God redeems even the brokenness of my past. My kids can always look back now and say, I never gave up. I never was willing to throw the towel in. I fought the good fight, and that I was willing to push forward despite the incredibly hard path we've had to walk.
So, do you think your dad's proud of you?
Oh, man. Yeah.
So I just gotta say this right off the bat. So that man on the screen, Paul Bruner, is, honest to God, he is one of my favorite people I have ever had the honor to meet. He is such a good pastor. I'm better for having been pastored by him. You would never know it. This place literally does not function without Paul Bruner, and it's not an exaggeration. But he's always behind the scenes. Like, if you've ever even had the chance to meet the guy, you probably met him while he's mopping some mess out in the lobby, or, he's wearing an orange vest and he's helping to park cars. And even in the midst of everything he just talked about, he's still one of the best living examples I've ever seen of what we're going to talk about next, which is masculinity by God's design. All right, but, still so I don't, blow smoke up the dude's skirt, he's also one of the funniest guys I know, and he deals, pretty much only in fecal-oriented humor. You can tell a poop joke like no one else you've ever met. Before I derail, though, so like we just saw in that video, whether it's tyranny or it's passivity, the people who suffer as a result of our sideways masculinity are the people that we care the most about in life. We don't even know what's happening. We just wake up one day and we're losing people. And so what do we do about it? What do we do about our masculinity? And the answer cannot be to just do away with it. It's not possible. So what are we supposed to do? And the answer, again, it's as ancient as the problem. The only way to fight off tyranny or passivity is to go back to the operator's manual, because the only healthy version of masculinity is God-designed masculinity. Well, what does that look like? How do we find that? Well, we can see it in Jesus. Again, we were designed to co-rule with God as kings. What kind of king? Well, Jesus is described as the King of all kings. so we can see perfect masculinity on display in Jesus. It's just a bummer that we almost never think of him. At least for me, right? Like when I'm trying to picture the most masculine person I can possibly imagine, I never think of Jesus first. I don't know why that is. You know, it's probably just too many paintings of the guy with long, perfectly conditioned hair, you know? Like gently crying into a sunset for some reason. I don't know why it is, but I do know that if we get to know the very real Jesus, we discover that he's the ultimate man's man. And how could he not be? He was God in the flesh. And if God designed masculinity in his own image, then it just makes sense that when Jesus was walking around this planet all those years ago, he was putting perfect God-designed masculinity on display. So what does God-designed masculinity look like on display in the life of Jesus? And rather than walk us through his whole story, which we talk about all the time in here, I want to pull a verse written by a guy named Paul. He sums it up perfectly. Paul wrote the majority of the New Testament. Not different Paul, not that Paul. He didn't write the Bible. There'd be way more fart jokes in the Bible if you wrote. There are some fart jokes in the Bible, by the way. But anyway, Bible Paul. See, I'm trying not to derail. So Bible Paul, he writes this to sum up Jesus' life. He says this: your attitude should be the same as Christ Jesus. So we should reflect the way that Jesus operated. And then he describes how Jesus operates. He says, Jesus, who being in the very nature God, he was God in the flesh, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, something to be held on to. He let go of that elevated status to become human like us. He made himself nothing, taking on the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. Servant, humble, obedient, self-sacrificing. Perfect God-designed masculinity on display in the life of Jesus looks like this. And I'm borrowing from an author here. I didn't come up with this, but it's perfect. God-designed masculinity is the glad assumption of sacrificial responsibility. The glad assumption of sacrificial responsibility. I would be glad to sacrifice myself on your behalf. And here's what just happened. For the majority of the men in the room, regardless of who you are or where you came from, your heart just skipped a beat. And that's because deep inside of you, some of us is buried way deep down there, but it's still in there. It's in every man in the room. There is something in us that resonates with that sentence on the screen. We know that's it. We know that's what we were designed to do. We know we would be honored to do it. For the women in the room, again, regardless of who you are or where you came from, your heart just skipped a beat. Because if us men could just get this right in your lives and operate solely out of the glad assumption of sacrificial responsibility, you are the ones who win for it. The reason this resonates with most of us is because we just encountered reality. It's just the truth. It's what we were designed for. We are created things. And that sentence on the screen is what we're supposed to do by design. It's like the first sentence in the operator's manual. It's what we were made for, to take on the glad assumption of sacrificial responsibility. And every word in the definition is so important, so I want to break it down. Because in that design, there's no room for passivity. Because God designed masculinity is the assumption of responsibility. And at the core of responsibility is the demand that we respond, we do something. We have to engage. We can't sit on the sidelines, sit on our hands, or check out within this kind of masculinity. People need us. We can't leave them out there on their own. We can't cover our eyes and hope the problem goes away. It's our problem. It's our problem to solve, our responsibility. In this design, there's no room for tyranny. Because God designed masculinity is the assumption of sacrificial responsibility. We step into power and we step into authority, but we do so only for the sake of everyone else around us. What we want as men is supposed to become identical to what the people around us need. And so we sacrifice ourselves on their behalf because we want what they need. And in that design, there's also no room for whining or grumbling about it. There's no room for a martyr's complex because God designed masculinity is the glad assumption of sacrificial responsibility. We put ourselves on the line for the sake of others, and we're glad to do so. We're glad to do so because we know this is what we were made for. This is supposed to be our wheelhouse as men, our source of joy and meaning in a confusing life, to lay ourselves down in order to elevate others. And whether or not you believe in any of this Jesus stuff, none of us can think of one single con to men operating out of God-designed masculinity, the glad assumption of sacrificial responsibility. So what do we do with this information? For those of us who keep slipping into tyranny or slipping into passivity, or more realistically, we're probably bouncing back and forth between the two of them, where do we begin? And the older I get, I feel like the more I'm learning this lesson that every long journey in reality is just a bunch of tiny steps you promise yourself you keep making. And so as men, here is a tiny step we should promise ourselves to keep making. It is God-designed masculinity. You're going to hate that I'm saying this on Super Bowl weekend, but I do believe it starts here. It's this: get off the couch. Now, ladies, don't do too much clapping. Get off the couch. See, I don't think this is helpful. I don't think it's helpful to talk in extremes, extreme hypotheticals. So here's what I mean by that. I don't think it's helpful to say, I get it. Every man in the room, myself included, we would all say that we would take a bullet for the people that we love. Okay. Right? Chances are probably not going to happen today. I pray it never happens to us. And so the better challenge for the reality of our day-to-day lives is, can we even get off the couch? And I picked this challenge because it's the most personally convicting one for me. So I'm telling you, I'm preaching to myself as much as I'm preaching to any other man in the room. But listen, I know we're tired. I know we're sick. Hey, we got real justifiable reasons for feeling stressed. It doesn't change the fact that people are counting on us. Our kids need us to coach them. Kids need us to discipline them, to lead them. They need us to just get on the carpet and play with them. Don't back down. Get off the couch. Our wives, our girlfriends, they need us to love them. They need us to protect them and provide for them, not just physically, spiritually, and emotionally. They just need us to give a care. That's what they need at the end of the day. They also need us to know that we enjoy their company. Have a good laugh with them. Remind them, I don't just love you, I like you. I like being around you. Don't back down. Get off the couch. I really think our world is primed for this right now. I think our culture's craving it right now. Just as some dumb example, all right? So I'm one of those guys, I was raised to hold the door no matter what, all right? A couple months ago, I'm at Barnes & Noble. I open the door, I do the check, and there's this older woman with a cane moving kind of slowly. She's pretty far away. Right? If you're a door holder, you know there's this invisible perimeter. She's on the edge of it. And so I'm like, I don't know, should I hold the door? I felt bad for her though, so I held the door. About 30 minutes later, she gets up to me. And she gets up to me, she stops, and she grabs my arm. And she didn't even sound happy. She actually sounded kind of mad. She didn't even look me in the eye. She just stops, she grabs my arm, she's out of breath, and she goes, "Oh, thank God, good men still exist." Real angry. But then I laughed and I followed her into Barnes & Noble for another half hour. That's just some stupid door though. So can you imagine what might happen if thousands of us men in this room and all the different rooms at all of our different campuses in this little corner of Colorado started getting off the couch? As a metaphor, of course, for sacrificing whatever it is we tricked ourselves into thinking we've earned or deserved. And we sacrifice that on behalf of the people entrusted to us. I can't help but wonder if our wives, our girlfriends, our kids, our employees, our friends, maybe even our culture would eventually turn their heads and say, "Thank God, good men still exist." What if we did that together intentionally? We try to become hyper aware of what the people entrusted to us need from us. And then when we start internally groaning about it, saying, "I'm too tired, not today, not my problem, not my fault, not my responsibility," we hit pause, we step back, and we rethink. And we remember that Jesus said it's moments like this that we were designed for. It's the only fulfillment you're ever going to find when it comes to masculinity. And so we remember it and we get off the couch. Now, I'm about to pray for us, but I want to end a certain way. I want to end this way, because anytime we talk about the heavy sacrificial responsibility that we as men were designed to carry, the response is usually fear. All right, at least it is for me. You know, we get up in our heads. We're real good at living up in our heads, you know? So we get up there and we start going, well, that's a lot, you know, and I don't think I'm equipped. I don't know if I'm enough. Maybe we're starting to think, you know, I've already screwed it up too badly and there's no coming back from it. And so I want to end this thing with encouragement to the men in the room. All right, it's the same encouragement that Paul himself offered after that verse in Philippians that I just read. So after he says our attitude should be like Jesus, who gladly assumed sacrificial responsibility, after that, he gives us this real mysterious encouragement. And I love this verse. I want to share it with you. So Paul says this. He says, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Sounds weird at first. That's not how we would say it. But fear and trembling, those original words, they don't mean anxiety. So it doesn't mean fear of not being equipped, fear of not being enough, or fear of the responsibility itself. Instead, the original words for fear and trembling there, it means something like with a chill down your spine, where the hair stands up on your arm. It's that feeling when you're in the presence of something way bigger than yourself. When you finish the hike and you're on top of the mountain and you get to look out, when you met the person you loved and later made vows, when you found out you were pregnant, later when you held the baby in your arms for the first time and she opened her eyes, just awe and amazement. It sends a chill down your spine. If I were to put Paul's verse in Ben language, it would go something like this. Continue to walk this with God kind of life with a chill down your spine. And then he explains why we should have a chill down your spine. It's the best. He says, continue to walk this with God kind of life with a chill down your spine. Because it is God who works in you to will and to act according to his good purpose. So do something with me. I want everybody to stand up with me. I don't care what culture told you. I don't care what society told you. I don't care what your friends said. I don't care what your dad taught you. The only way we are ever going to feel like good men is if we stand gladly in the assumption of sacrificial responsibility. It's just truth. It's just reality. I mean, don't take my word for it. Go test it. Everything else is going to fall apart on you. And then there's this one niche that we were designed for. We were made for this. And it's going to be fulfilling. But it's overwhelming. Right? So it feels like a lot of responsibility. And so let us be encouraged by what God himself said to us through his word when he says, continue to walk this with me kind of life with a chill down your spine. Because I'm the one who works in you to accomplish my good purpose. Which means this is the mystery of what it means to be a man who follows Jesus. It means the God of the universe is the one who wants to parent our kids. He only wants to do that in and through us. The God of the universe wants to run your business. He only wants to do that through you. The God of the universe wants to adore our wives and cherish them and set them up to succeed. He only wants to do that in and through us. And he doesn't want to do it any old way. He wants to do it by the book, by the manual, in the way that we were designed. He wants to accomplish this the way he has always and will always accomplish it, through the glad assumption of sacrificial responsibility. It's the only thing that's going to fulfill you as a man. We're not doing this on our own. It is God who works in us, and it's crazy. He wants to benevolently care and rule this entire planet in and through our masculinity. If you can grasp it, it's enough to send a chill down your spine. And if you can grasp it, we should feel honored to have been made to do that. And if you can grasp it, I think we can gladly get off the couch for it. Pray with me. God, I thank you so much for who you are. Man, you put all these puzzle pieces in play, did it perfectly. We get confused, we get distracted, we get sideways. You never do. The whole thing is in order. I'm thankful for your intention. You created us and you designed us men, for this very specific task, and we should be glad to do it. And you don't design us to just put ourselves on the line and sacrifice ourselves for other people. You are a leader. You went first. You've done this since the beginning of time. It is the defining characteristic of how you've operated. It is put perfectly on display in Jesus, the person that we worship. You have done nothing but sacrifice yourself gladly on our behalf. I want to live that way. The truth is, like, the reality of day-to-day life is it feels overwhelming. We got these people in our lives. They're calling us friend. They're calling us boss. They're calling us husband. They're calling us dad. It starts to feel overwhelming. So what I'm praying for is send that chill down our spine. Remind us we're not doing this on our own. You're the one who's going to parent our kids. You're going to do it through us. You're the one who's going to love our wives. You're going to do it through us. Send that chill down our spine. Today and for the next few weeks, for the next few months, just keep reminding us. Send that chill down our spine. And if we do, if we can grasp it, then God, as your men, we are honored to be men. We are honored to do that with you. And we are honored to be your men. Thank you for this responsibility. We are glad to do it. We pray this in your Son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Our chains are gone.
Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next weekend.